Hey everybody, welcome back. I hope you guys are enjoying it out there. The Kryptonite Show is hot on live, so we're gonna have a great time here today, and we've got a brand new format, so that's gonna be a lot of fun to see as well. Let us know how you get on. So let's see. Waiting for it to go live here on the show, and let's see. So I hope you guys if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Hit the like button, hit the bell for further videos as well, because obviously we're going to be pumping them out as in our new format, which is pretty cool. So I'm just going to check something here just to make sure everything is going live there. I see that that's set up a little differently. So one little technical hiccup there that I was expected to see. But a big welcome to everybody. And we're going to get into a very, very important topic, the US budget. Obviously Trump there with the House and the Senate looking to push through the new budget. They control all the government, but they've got some thin margins around the Senate and the House. So they're looking at some pretty fast track process to get that through, and of course they just got it through the resolution through the House. So we're going to look at that today. So without further ado, get into the chat there. Let you know your opinion on the US budget, on revenue, on spending, on tax cuts. What are your priorities, stuff like that? And if you're in the United States, definitely get in the chat there and get your opinion in there, right? So yeah, let's go. All right, so we're going to check it off here. We'll start off here with the actual resolution. You can see a picture of it here on Fox News. They got the concurrent resolution that went through the House. It's a pretty long document. So it's definitely it might take a little while to read through. But this is what was pushed through the House today, and we're going to check out just a quick video on the results that were achieved today in terms of the voting in the House to pass this through to the committees, which is next, and then of course off to the Senate eventually, and of course also hear from the chairman there, Johnson. So we're going to get into all that as well. So let's play the video.
Vote, the ayes are 217, the nays are 215. Majority voting in the affirmative, the concurrent resolution is adopted.
Thank you all for staying on a long night. We got it done. We had the requisite number of votes to move this process along, and now passing the budget resolution in the House, it will go to the Senate. This is the first important step and in opening up the reconciliation process. We have a lot of hard work ahead of us, but we are going to deliver the America First agenda. We're going to deliver all of it, not just parts of it, and this was the first step in that process. So grateful to my colleagues who worked so hard to get us here, and to all the leaders of the chairs of the committees of jurisdiction. Chairman Arrington did a great job on the Budget Committee, and Chairman Smith on Ways and Means, and all of our colleagues who worked on this. So a lot of work yet to be done, but we're going to celebrate tonight, and we'll roll up our sleeves and get right back at it in the morning. Thank you so much.
So that was the House Speaker there, Johnson, and pretty happy with getting that resolution passed through. So Trump's bill with $4.7 trillion in tax cuts survives the House vote and moves on to the committees. So that's pretty exciting. We had a comment in the chat there, so let's get to that. We've got Property View in the House saying, let's have a look there. They did some more big borrowing. I imagine they still need this at present to fund Biden's former government spending. A big ship to turn around, no doubt, says Property View. 100%. So we're going to get into that with the debt ceiling there. All right, excellent comment there. So let's get into a bit of a read what's actually happened in the last 24 hours here. So the massive GOP bill would also direct $4 trillion towards raising the debt level. So good observation there by Property View. The House of Representatives has adopted a resolution that will eventually become a massive multi-trillion-dollar bill full of President Donald Trump's priorities on the border. So the southern border, northern border, defense, obviously with Pete Hegseth there leading the Department of Defense there as the Secretary. Energy, which is obviously a huge platform for lowering the cost of the whole U.S. Economic engine and dealing with inflation as well. And taxes, right? Giving tax breaks to stimulate productive spending and consumption. So pretty exciting stuff there. And a major victory for the House GOP leaders. The resolution passed 217 to 215 votes. You saw 214 in the video, but actually snuck up there to 215. So only narrowly got that through All Democrats voted against the measure, along with a lone Republican, Thomas Massie from Kentucky, from the looks of it, and of course, who was concerned about its effect on the national deficit. But of course, Trump is doing a lot of stuff around Dodge on the deficit, so I think we're going to get big GDP growth. I think in the bill it was something around 3% projected, but I think it's going to be a lot bigger than that. So that's pretty interesting. The next step is now for the relevant House committees to meet and build their own proposals. So that's the next step there, which will eventually be returned into the framework and negotiated into a compromise deal with the Senate. It was a dramatic scene in the House chamber, so there's always drama between Democrats and Republicans whenever they're in there. But of course, the Republicans have got control, albeit thin margins there in the House and Senate. It was a dramatic scene in the House chamber on Monday night as Republican leaders delayed formally ending a vote for roughly 45 minutes as they worked to convince conservative fiscal hawks to support the legislation. So these are people that want much more aggressive cuts in the budget. Impatient Democrats called out loud for the vote to be closed as Republicans huddled in various groups. Two people on the House floor told Fox News Digital that President Donald Trump got involved at one point, which is pretty interesting. Speaking to one of the holdouts, Rep. Victoria Sparks there from Indiana by phone. Reps Tim Burton and Warren Davidson there from Tennessee and Ohio, respectively, could be seen on the phone at other points in time on the House floor as well. But it's clearly not clear they were speaking with Trump. So you got all this, a bit like one of those stock market pits where everyone's trying to rally the troops and get them to vote, right? So get them on board. Some people are more conservative, some people are more liberal, even within the Republican Party and, of course, the Democrat Party as well. At one point, the House GOP leaders appeared to lose confidence. That is what they're commentating and saying. Whether they did or not is another question. But it certainly was getting pretty tight that they had enough support and abruptly cancelled the planned vote. Moments later, however, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle were rushing back to the House floor, and Fox News Digital was told the vote would be held. And, of course, it was successful. Meanwhile, 3 House Democrats who had been absent early in the day returned for the Tuesday evening vote in dramatic fashion. Republican Brittany Patterson from Colorado, who had a baby roughly a month ago, returned to the House floor with her infant to oppose the bill, of course. And Kevin McMullen there from California, who was recently hospitalized for an infection, appeared in the chamber, aided by a walker. House and Senate Republicans are aiming to use their majorities, of course, to advance Trump agenda via the budget reconciliation process. So I got that highlighted. It's a Senate maneuver that allows the threshold for passage from 2/3 to a simple majority. So instead of needing 67% or something, they'll only need 51% or more. But it's used, or at least the majority of the vote there. But it's used when a party controls both houses of Congress and the White House, because it allows the party to pass its policy goals even under the slimmest of margins, which it has, right? The Republicans are dealing with slim margins indeed. With the current numbers, the House GOP can afford no more than one defection to pass anything without Democratic votes if all Liberals are voting. On the Senate side, Republicans can lose no more than 2 of their own in the reconciliation process. So that's how close it is. Obviously, with the next voting for Senate, there's another 33% of the seats, or 33 seats up for vote, and I believe they're favoured for the Republicans at the moment. By the time we get to that in a year or so time, I'm sure it's going to be even higher as well. The House resolution aimed to increase spending on border. So this is really the heart of the spending there. House resolution aimed at spending on border security and judiciary and the defense by roughly $300 billion, while seeking to at least cut 1.5 to 2 trillion in spending cuts elsewhere. So severe spending cuts. And we already know that Trump's well on the road to that with the existing budgets, with the Dodge efficiency, right? Trying to get rid of potentially $1 trillion or more of spending there. As written, the House bill was also provide $4.5 trillion to extend President Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts and Job Act's provisions, which expire at the end of this year. So they're looking to extend those. An amended negotiation by the House Budget Committee Chairman Jody Arlington there from Texas, and conservatives on this panel would also force lawmakers to make $2 trillion in cuts, or else risk the $4.5 trillion for Trump's tax cuts getting reduced by the difference. The resolution also fulfilled Trump's directive to act on the debt limit, raising it by $4 trillion, or roughly 2 years. So that is, we'll get a bit of room there for Trump to get his spending down, and of course raise revenue, raise GDP. The bipartisan deal struck in 2023 saw the debt limit suspended until January 2025. And of course, we've just passed that. Now projections show that the US could run out of cash to pay its debts by spring if Congress doesn't act. So that's going to be a priority as well, getting that debt ceiling there up by about $4 trillion. The resolution's odds were touch and go for much of the week so far, since House lawmakers returned from a week-long recess period on Monday. Several fiscal conservatives had demanded more assurances from the House GOP leadership that Republicans would seek deep spending cuts to offset the cost of Trump's priorities. Republican lawmakers in more competitive districts are concerned some cuts may go too far. So we have seen that. However, the resolution directs the House Energy and Commerce Committee to find at least $880 billion in spending cuts, which those lawmakers fear will mean severe cuts for federal programs like Medicaid. And of course, the Democrats are jumping onto that, making that a big fear. Of course, that wasn't part of the deal. Speaker Mike Johnson pushed back against fears of such cuts during his weekly press conference on Tuesday. Around that, Medicaid is hugely problematic because it has a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse. Everybody knows that. We all know it intuitively. No one here would disagree. Johnson said, what we're talking about is rooting out the fraud, waste, and abuse. It doesn't matter what party you're in. You should be for that because it saves your money and it preserves the programs that it is available for the people who desperately need it. It was also supported by a wide swath of Republicans, including conservative Brandon Gill from Texas, a member of the House Budget Committee that approved the bill earlier this month. It was the best bill we're going to get, Gill said, while praising committee chairman Jody Arlington from Texas for his efforts. If I were writing it, then I'd write it differently, but this is the best we're going to get it. Randy Fenster, there, a Republican from Ohio, said he was eager to begin working on cutting taxes for Iowans, securing the border, unleashing American energy, and eliminating waste and fraud in the government. So that all pretty much lines up with where Trump is at, right? So that's pretty exciting things there. So that is the bill. Now, I wanted to get back to, what is this talking about, right? So the US at the moment has this big elephant in the room, right? So it is the US debt. US debt here, $36.2 trillion. It is the elephant in the room. It is a big deal. And of course, the Democrats don't care about it. They just keep spending. And the Republicans haven't really had enough vote to be able to not do the spending. And of course, some of the liberal Republicans or uniparty Republicans in the past were siding with the Democrats, spending more money as well. Now, a lot of those uniparty people and Republicans have been got rid of. Now, the old Republican Party's really been slashed, and now we've got a new MAGA party, right? It really has taken dominance, and for good reason. It's based on common sense and doing all the basics right? So it's pretty exciting from that point of view. So the debt's pretty huge. And we can see how the debt gets bigger and bigger. So it's like your basic household budget. The government gets revenue. The federal government, let's say, it earns $400. Spending is $500. That means the deficit is $100. Year two, if the government is earning $600 and they spend $800, that they're out of the money $200. So over 2 years, that's $300, and that all goes to the debt. That's how simple the debt gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's got so big, in fact, it's now at $36.2 trillion, which is just insane. And I'm going to show you how insane that is compared to the amount of taxpayers in the United States, which is a big deal. So pretty bad there. Now we're going to scroll down here a little bit here to see how it's been growing. This shows you over time how fast the U.S. national debt has grown over the last 100 years. I mean, it is pretty insane. So it's gone from 1924, $395 billion, all the way up until 2024, where it was 35.46 trillion, and now it's 36.2 trillion. And you can see the climb has been dramatically, especially since 2006, around what they call the Great Recession. It has absolutely rocketed from 13.64 trillion all the way up to 36.2 trillion now. It is pretty insane. So you can see America is addicted to debt. Not necessarily America, of course, but the Democrats generally, which are very spendy, thrifty, right? They just want bigger government and spend more. They want to tax more. That's pretty much their memorandum of operation there. Now, how does that? So the government, of course, has a certain amount of income collected by taxes. That's relative to the national income of the country. And of course, the bigger the national income is in the country, the more your taxes you get, right? So that's kind of the play there. Now, the federal debt over time compared to GDP you can see that it's his from the 1980s. It was down here at about 35%. It has climbed all the way up here to 123% debt to GDP. Now we see this trend in quite a few countries in the West, but it's still pretty horrendous that you're at 123% debt to GDP. Really not a great sustainable rate there. Obviously, the US is the reserve currency in the world and has quite a bit of kudos in that position. It sort of defends it quite well. But the debt has just been climbing out of control as well. So yeah, pretty crazy. You can see here the distribution here. So you've got debt held by the public is in purple. It's 28.91 trillion, and intergovernment holdings is 7.31 trillion in 2025. This is what it used to be in 2015. You can see that the debt held by the public is huge, right? So when we say that, essentially federal government, but that is where we are at the moment. So it's pretty crazy. Now, the average interest rate. Now, on debt, you got to pay interest, right? That interest comes out of your taxes, so it's not for free. You don't get the money for free. And the average interest rate now is 3.32%, which is pretty crazy. In 2015, it was down low because we had low interest rates, right? It was at 2.35%. It really bottomed out at the 1.61% in 2021. Of course, then we got the impacts of COVID and the lockdowns and all the other tyrannies that were out there. And now it's up at 3.32% there. And of course, the debt was growing, right? The debt was growing as well. So the interest rate was growing and your debt was growing extremely high. So your total interest costs were going through the roof, which is pretty bad. Now, getting back to the debt ceiling, that debt ceiling, of course, has been looking to be lifted. It expired January and looking to be lifted there before spring. So up to by $4 trillion to give you a bit of room there. So that would get you up to probably $40 trillion, somewhere thereabouts on the debt there. So that's kind of where we are at the moment on the debt. So the debt is the elephant in the room, but we're also going to talk about the income, right? The federal income and expenditures, because this is what the federal budget's about. So let's have a look at that. So at the moment, revenue generated by the government. So we've got government revenue as income derived from taxes and other sources that pay for the government. And we can see that's at 1.6 trillion at the moment is the revenue that is being earned there. And of course, let's have a look at some of the breakdowns of this. So we're going to go down and have a look through some of these. So this is if you're not very familiar with how the federal government operates in the United States. Hopefully this is giving you a bit of a Blue's Clues about what this budget all means. So this is sources of the revenue from the U.S. federal government, and it's currently year to date, pretty much, or financial year 2025. And we can see that individual income taxes. So if you're doing a job, this is the majority of the taxes for the federal government. About 51.6% of all taxes are from your tax as you're going to work. You're paying individual income taxes there. Now there are other taxes. We can see that Social Security and Medicare taxes. 34.7%, so it's a huge chunk there. Remember, those are some of the big expenses as well. So you got the taxes, those are some of the big expenses there. Corporate income tax is 8.4%. So some people might argue that's probably an area that they could tax more. But of course, if you tax companies too much, you also dampen down investment and job growth. So there's a bit of a balance there to be made. Miscellaneous there, 0.8%. Custom duties, 1.76%. And of course, you've got estate and taxes there at 0.57%, about $9 billion. But the bulk of it is individual income taxes, about $823 billion a year. And of course, you've got $554 billion coming from Social Security and Medicare taxes, and finally that corporate income, about $134 billion as well. So those are what makes up a total revenue of $1.6 trillion. But of course, let's scroll down a little bit further here, and we can see the breakdown of federal revenue over time. Remember, you've got your income, you get your expenses, and then you've got your net debt or savings, and that either adds or reduces that public debt that we talked about at 36.2 trillion. That's basically the idea there. So that is the breakdown at the moment. So pretty crazy. You can see particularly that individual income taxes have obviously risen, and that's 2.43 trillion. Social Security, Medicare taxes, this is over a full year, 2024-25 is 1.7 trillion, that's 35%, and corporate income taxes $500 billion at 11%, and then you got the miscellaneous for everything else, which is excise tax, custom duties, and excise, estate and gift taxes there, all sub 1% or 2%. So the bulk of it really is the Social Security and Medicare and individual income taxes. So that's pretty cool. Now, obviously, if you grow the US economy, which Trump is going to be trying to do with all of his growth plans, then you're going to increase individual income tax. Even if you lower the tax rates, you're still going to get a benefit from that because you're going to obviously try and lower the expenses as well. And of course, you can increase corporate income tax as well by building, growing your economy more, and of course also get more custom duties, etc. as well if you get a lot of tariffs and things like that. So that's pretty exciting. Now, obviously, GDP has been climbing in the US. So a GDP there is up at $28.83 trillion US dollars. That's how big the US economy is. It is a juggernaut at the moment. And of course, you can see that's continued to grow. Since 2015, it was at 24 trillion, where revenue for the federal revenue is 4.3 trillion. But now it is about just under 5 trillion revenue, and for 2024, and the GDP was 28.3 trillion. So GDP there, it's about 17% basically is what that revenue is. So that's what Trump's got to play with, right? As well. So he's got to try and grow the GDP with his growth policies and reduce costs as well. And he's got to try and get a balanced budget. That's what he's trying to target for. In other words, have expenses the same amount as revenue. And of course, he's going to lower those taxes, but lower the costs and drive maybe the total budget and revenue down is what Trump's going to do there while growing the US economy. So it's a win-win. And this is going to make him, if he achieves all this, if he does all that, reduces the revenue, but increases it via growth. So it reduces the taxes, increases it via growth, and also lowers the costs that are in this budget. And of course, he's targeting at least $1 trillion or more a year. Gets to balanced budget at the very least for the first year, and then the second year trying to get a budget surplus, and then lowers the national debt, and then of course grows the US economy, making that get even bigger. He's going to be probably touted, in addition to all the things he's done at the moment, as the greatest American president, and actually achieving the unachievable, what progressive and liberals and globalists say impossible because they're addicted to spending and debt. He will achieve. And of course, in addition to that, he's focused on foreign policy as well with world peace. So you can imagine that's a double hitter, and that would make him easily the greatest president standing alone, probably since the founding of the United States. So there's a lot in Sue here, but you can sort of see the vision that he is leading to. Now, what is the current state of the US? Well, we've got that here on this chart. But before we get into that, we've got property view and house there. Debt is insane. It absolutely is insane. Yeah, if you're watching, get your views in the chat there, especially if you're in the United States, because this is a turning point potentially for the United States that no one ever thought would come. So this is really, really exciting. Wookie says, Wookie, it's on the road. Hey, Wookie, hope you're having a safe travel back home there. Big shout out to you. So this is where we are at the moment on the US national debt, 36.5. So it's even higher now. This is in real time. This is on usdebtclock.org, usdebtclock.org. And you can see at the top here, we're at 36.5 trillion. I'll see if I can expand that a little bit more. 36.5 trillion national debt in the United States. And I told you I was going to tell you how big this is for the citizen. So that's $107,000 per citizen equivalent. Obviously, this is under the responsibility of the US government to solve. But essentially, you're still, as a citizen, you're still on the hawk, really, because it's got to come from somewhere, right? So the debt per citizen, $107,309. But if you're a taxpayer, it's 3 times worse. It's $323,000 per taxpayer. So just think about how much taxes you pay. That is what it averages, right? That's insane. It is pretty crazy there on that. So pretty crazy. The debt per taxpayer is just crazy. Now, the federal spending, we talked about the federal government is earning about $5 trillion. You can see it here in green. That is $5 trillion and 38. That's the current number projected here on US Debt Clock in real time. But of course, the spending is over here, $7 trillion. So you're earning $5 trillion. Imagine your household, you're earning $5 trillion, but you're spending $7 trillion. That means you're out of pocket by $2 trillion. See here, $2 trillion. That's incredible. So it's the total amount difference between the total amount spent by Congress and the revenue received by the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. So pretty crazy there, $2 trillion. Now you think that's bad. That is terrible. But do you think it's, and that deficit there is going to be added to the national debt over here, this 36.5 trillion. And so as we move along in time, that US debt is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger if it's not addressed. This was a ticking time bomb. No one wanted to deal with it. and no one could because of the bipartisan politics, and particularly because the Democrats were basically spending the United States and the Uni Party members in the GOP into doom and utter doom, actually destroying their own country across the board on just about every measure. So it's pretty crazy here. But here we are at 30.5 trillion. Now that 2 trillion, I said it gets worse. That 2 trillion, guess how much is in interest on debt? That means it's not even being spent productively. It's $1 trillion is spent on interest. Remember I said to you that I showed the other charts there at the average debt rate was about 3.39%. Well, it's equivalent because the debt's getting bigger and the interest rate's gone up. Remember, it was really low a couple of years back when we had low interest rates, about 1.6%. It's now 3.3% and has been pretty high. And now we're at 1 trillion just on interest. So out of that 2 trillion, we got 1 trillion is just on debt. So it's not even, you're not even seeing it. And who owns most of that debt? Well, China and other countries like that. So you're actually paying the Chinese to militarize, to expand in the South Pacific. You think about it, you're actually helping them do that. Not only you buying their goods, but you're also paying. You're paying them the interest on the money for the most part. So it's a disaster. They own a lot of the bonds, so it's pretty crazy. It is a psychotic position to be in, honestly. And we already, if you're not aware, we actually have the Chinese military, the Navy, for the first time down in the Tasman Sea between Australia and New Zealand, with 3 warships, 2 very advanced warships, and a fuel supply ship. For the first time in between Australia and New Zealand, doing live fire drills. If you weren't aware of that, that's how dramatic it is. So, and at the moment, there's these perverse situations where you got interest on debt of 1 trillion, negative 2 trillion. So you can see why Trump is trying to do tax cuts, because he wants to stimulate the US economy, put money back into decision makers, into households to decide rather than the government, which is was getting just too powerful. And of course, he wants to strip out a lot of the spending and shrink the government dramatically for the first time. This is a significant historical pivot. And of course, he also wants to grow the US economy and get taxes that way. Obviously, if you grow the US economy, you're going to offset some of those taxes there. Like I said, the budget, I think, had around about 3% expected of GDP. Now, if Trump does a lot better than 3% in GDP, then you're going to have even more tax revenue, and the US is going to be even more richer, and because his growth strategy is pretty aggressive. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see that. Now, you also know that Trump, not only has he got these big growth policies, but he's trying to reduce the existing budget costs, and he's got Dodge there. There's a Dodge clock here with Elon Musk, right? So this is the Department of Government Efficiency by Elon Musk, and already it's saved, theoretically, by canceling contracts, $138 billion. But I suggest to you, once they go through all the departments, this is probably going to get through over $1 trillion or more, which would be a dramatic savings. Remember, the government is earning 5 trillion, it's spending 7 trillion. So if you can save $1 trillion, you're already halving this budget deficit by $1 trillion, right? So what Trump's going to try and do is he's trying to stimulate the US economy, get the revenue up, reduce the expenses, right? So get that 5 trillion up, reduce the 7 trillion, and get that budget to balanced budget, right? And Dodge is the key mechanism he's going to be doing there. So I suggest to you it's going to be $1 trillion or more dollars they will find that reduce that. That's the game. So let me know what you think about that. Let me have a look at some of the comments here. Produce says, this is great raw commentary. Not many YouTubers would take on this topic. We understand the depth. I appreciate that probably view. Big shout out. Wookie's in the house there says, let's see what his comment is. We've got all this flash animation now. The Chinese had a saying before the Americans goodbye, any goods first, we have to lend them the money. The Chinese had a saying before the Americans goodbye, any goods first, we have to lend them the money. That's probably pretty true there. So pretty crazy. All right, so that is where we're at the moment on that. So it's pretty crazy, isn't it? In that situation, pretty crazy. Now think about how big Medicare is. So when you hear the Democrats talking about Medicare and Social Security, and some of the Republicans too, you can see Medicare at the moment is spent is just under 1.7 trillion. The Social Security is about 1.5 trillion. And what the Speaker Johnson was arguing on that video was that there's a lot of fraud and carry on going on with Medicare and Social Security. And so you can find a lot of efficiencies there. In fact, they've found, particularly, I think, Social Security, hundreds of billions of dollars being scammed out from overseas. So this could be dramatically reduced just by getting rid of that overseas payments and scamming and fraud that is going on Social Security. So expect we could get some pretty significant savings through there as well. And of course, that should show up on the old Dodge clock there. Now, I'm talking about the budget spending here, official there, but the actual spending is actually higher, 7.2 trillion. You can see there, and of course, the Dodge is trying to save that. Pretty crazy. So that is where we are at the moment. And defense, of course, $882 billion. It is massive. US is, of course, the biggest military, has the biggest budget, followed by China and then Japan. Of course, Japan, of course, is given up its pacifism that it had in its constitution because of the threat of China in the South China Sea, and of course is now militarizing and has the third biggest budget. Obviously, we've got India, of course, is pretty large now too. They have got themselves aircraft carriers. They're building, advanced frigates and other Navy ships. Of course, as Air Force as well, and recently have just come to the White House to purchase F-35s. In fact, I think they're purchasing something like $2 billion or so, $3 billion worth of F-35. So I think that's about 130 F-35 planes are going to be purchased by China and going over by India and going over to India. Now, America doesn't sell F-35 planes just to anybody. So, you might be lucky to get them. Israel, for example, UK, I think Australia has them. You got to be pretty strong ally to get that top fighter plane. Of course, they are very useful. We've seen Israel use them incredibly well against Iran and taking out the vast majority of their advanced air defense. So opening them up to potentially a nuclear strike on any of their nuclear bays. So that is pretty crazy stuff there with that $883 billion. And of course, we know that Pete Hegseth, there, the Secretary of Defense, will be going through some of that budget there as well. Now, obviously, US has been getting a lot of its, I would say, certain types of ammunition that it's had stored up has been going to Israel, has been going to, Ukraine. And so that US needs to restock and modernize. So US needs a lot more modernization. It's been doing some good stuff, but it needs a lot more advanced weapons. And of course, we know that Trump is wanting to go to put this star defense in, global star defense, to take out missiles from space and advanced weapons like that. Of course, Elon Musk is the perfect right-hand man for that, given the fact that he's got the most advanced rockets in the world. And of course, rapid reusability and the rest of it, and major production, right? So obviously, Elon is great on efficiency, great on manufacturing, and advanced technology. So he's the perfect ally there for Trump to have to achieve all these goals around defense, around budget efficiency, and of course around modernizing the United States and making it great again, as it were. So pretty exciting there. This debt is pretty crazy, isn't it? Breaking down some of this debt is pretty insane. $1 trillion in interest on debt. It's just crazy there. That's the net amount. Pretty crazy. Let's have a look at some of these other things that are on here. Just have a quick look at some of these there. The population in the US, based on this calculator, is 340 million people. The workforce is sitting at about 161 million. So that is that. And the officially unemployed is about 7 million at the moment, officially unemployed. So that is where we are at that moment. Just having a look at a few of these other cool metrics as well. We've got state debt as well. I haven't talked about state debt because we've got US federal tax revenue at $5 trillion, and we've got total state revenue. So if you're in one of the 50 states of the United States, maybe you're in the 51st state there. Let me know if you know what the 51st state of America will be in the chat there. Let me know if you've been listening to the news enough. The 51st state, what will that be? And of course, it could be 52nd state, and it could be the 53rd state as well. Who knows? But let us know what you think the 51st state will be. But at the moment, we've got 2.6 trillion in state revenue there. Isn't that crazy? And 2 trillion in local revenue. So that's some of the state income there. So United States is a powerhouse. That's pretty crazy stuff. I think New Zealand's income is like maybe a couple hundred million, maybe 300 million or something, 300 billion, I should say. I'm not sure that would be in US dollars, maybe 250 or something like that. So Kiwi's pretty poor. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. What else we're going to look at there? I'll just have a quick look through some of these key metrics while we go there. Revenue to GDP, 32.77%. Spending GDP, 40.8%. Let's see some of these other metrics here. Just have a look. So America's got 9.2 million people that are self-employed. 128 million people are in the private sector. So out of 161.7 million in the workforce, 128 million are in the private sector. And full-time workers, 133 million full-time workers, 28 million part-time workers. College tuition is 27,000. Let us know in the chat there if that's how much it costs you to go to college in the United States. I know there's community colleges. I know there's some of these top-tier colleges as well. Let us know in the chat there if you've recently gone through college or paid that, or you remember what you paid in that as well. Let's get through some more of these, going through some of these other stuff. So living in poverty, 37 million people in the United States living in poverty. That's about 10% of the population, which is pretty horrible. That's definitely an area that Trump has talked about dealing. And of course, there's 701,000 people homeless in the United States as recorded by this clock year. And of course, 114,000 drug deaths. We know that's a big priority for Trump, obviously dealing with drugs in the United States, fentanyl in particular, and of course the southern border and northern border to some small degree. And of course, that's 114,000 deaths. That's got to be the biggest. Is that the biggest death number in the country? Probably. I don't know. Maybe some of the normal medical conditions could be higher than that, but that is pretty high and should be highly unavoidable for the most part. I know that Trump is going to be running a number of ads, against drugs, so that's going to be pretty positive. Trump really is trying to deal with a lot of these problems as well as look after the military, retired military people and stuff like that. So we've got US retirees, 60 million people in the United States are retired. So out of 340 million, 60 million are retired. 8.3 million disabled. It's pretty interesting, isn't it? We've got Medicare enrollees, 64.5 million. Medicare recipients, 87 million. So it's pretty high there. I'm not sure what the difference is there, but that is the difference. What else there? Food stamp recipients. So if you're on food stamps, let us know, because there's 42.5 million people on food stamps in the United States. How many millionaires are there in the United States? So it's probably including their house values. It's 23.3 million. That's pretty interesting. The top 1% wealth, well, you have to have 19.6 million, apparently, to be in the top 1% of the wealth ownership there in the United States. So you've got a cool 19.6 mil. That would get you there. Now, the bottom 50% wealth, $34,000. So if you're in the bottom 50%, 34 as well. Yeah. So one area I would really like to see Trump work on is obviously he's working on the drug deaths, but it's the homeless in the United States, particularly I think in Democrat cities. Really like to see some big progress in there over the next 4 years, and I'm sure a lot of the good things he's doing around growth, around crime, will definitely lift the homeless things. But I would really like to see that dealt with, clearing up the cities and so forth. I did hear him talking about Washington and clearing that up so that state actors don't come in and see all the homeless there. But I really would like to see a major effort there, in addition to all the other great stuff he's doing to clean up the homelessness there and deal with a lot of those people who often have family abuse, life crisis, or drug addiction, or a bit of all of that. And so it'd be pretty interesting to see that dramatically reduced in any case. In Canada, for example, Trudeau, which is one of the worst leaders in the world we've ever seen, he instead of drugs, getting people off drugs, he just gives them more drugs, and that just is ludicrous, right? That's just ludicrous. And so hopefully we get some positive stuff there. People should be really valued, and there's nowhere better valued to people like that than looking after them in some way. Now, obviously, people have to also help themselves, but to get that balance right, very, very important. So that is some of the key things there going on. Just having a look down some of these other ones here. We've got small business assets, $15.5 trillion. Yeah, $15.5 trillion in small business assets here. Corporate assets, $23.4 trillion. Household assets, $167 trillion. And the US total national assets, $206 trillion in total assets. Now, we know Trump has talked about increasing the assets in the United States. They're going to be doing a big survey of that, and they want to increase the balance sheet, but they also don't want to. They want to increase the balance sheet and know exactly how much it's worth. That's including offshore, including above the ground and below the ground. What sort of minerals, what sort of energy have they got there? How can they tap into some of these things? And of course, he wants to get a better return on investment of the US national assets. So at the moment, everything included, we're at $206 trillion there. Assets per citizen in the United States, $605,000 US, which is pretty cool. And we saw that the debt per person is $107,000. So I guess we could say that the net is about half a $1 million per citizen in terms of assets there. You take out the debt, but still you've got to pay the debt back. The assets is not always it's just sitting there, right? Social Security liability 28 trillion. That's crazy. Looking forward, Medicare is 43 trillion. So I guess this is based on the future. I don't know if they've got a definition there. Yeah, Americans are living at or below the. That's a different one there. Trying to get the Medicare one. No, it's not giving me the right data there. Normally, when you click on a title, it gives you the right data there. U.S. funded liabilities 227 trillion. Net liability per person 666. $1,000 per citizen. So that would mean that actually on the balance sheet, Americans are out of the money by about what's that, $60,000. So Trump is going to try and increase the assets here, lower the liability, and let's see whether he can get not only pay off the debt and get America right there, but also increase the net asset value as well for Americans. That'd be pretty important. So that there is a bit of a summary of what's going on there. So hopefully you guys got to see that the resolution's gone through to extend those tax cuts, 4.5 trillion, trying to increase the debt ceiling by another 4 trillion. Obviously with debt there sitting at 36.5, probably taking it just over around 40 trillion to give Trump some headroom as they look to reduce the budget deficit, get budget neutral, and then reduce it would be the plan. That will reduce inflationary pressures from the government side of things, and then, of course, grow the U.S. economy. And he's always the supply side, right? Always focus on the supply side and then get the demand side working in response to that. And that is the ultimate goal, to grow the U.S. economy, reduce the federal government, and make everybody better off, right? So that's going to be a huge milestone and would truly make him the greatest president of all time. And, in a couple of years' time, if all that happens, and I'm very, very extremely optimistic about it happening, then everybody that's anti him, particularly the media, will have to bow down and kiss his feet, for example. That would be funny. All right, so it's not bad there. All right, so let's see where else we got here. We got, I think we got another comment, but it's not showing up there. Yeah, we got Canada says property view, Canada, as we say, Canada, Now we're in New Zealand down here, of course. We often make little jokes about Canada, so Canada is number 51st state. That's correct. And apparently, there's a number of sub-states in Canada that are pretty keen on becoming the 51st state. So we may actually. Some people laughed at it. Typically, liberals and progressives laugh at this stuff, but there's actually quite a bit of an appetite because the US gives them, a lot of defense, and of course, they'd get a lot of benefits from being inside the US. So you watch. Let's see what happens to Canada. I know that the Conservative leader there, Poilievre, who is likely to be the next Prime Minister at the current trends, and of course would be a saviour for the Canada, is obviously very Canadian, would be resisting that, of course. But you never know. You might get a state by state there in Canada falling away into the United States. That'd be very, very interesting. Now, I'm not sure what the constitutional rules are about all that sort of stuff. I'm pretty sure that Canada has a constitution. I have to double check that though. That'd be pretty interesting. So that is some of the cool stuff there. So if you guys haven't seen that video there, the resolution did get through. So let's quickly play that. 270 votes to yay, and 215 votes nay there.
Vote the ayes are 217, the nays are 215. Majority voting in the affirmative, the concurrent resolution is adopted.
Thank you all for staying on a long night. We got it done. We had the requisite number of votes to move this process along, and now passing the budget resolution in the House, it will go to the Senate. This is the first important step in opening up the reconciliation process. We have a lot of hard work ahead of us, but we are going to deliver the America First agenda. We're going to deliver all of it, not just parts of it, and this was the first step in that process. So grateful to my colleagues who worked so hard to get us here, and to all the leaders of the chairs of the committees of jurisdiction. Chairman Arrington did a great job on the Budget Committee, and Chairman Smith on Ways and Means, and all of our colleagues who worked on this. So a lot of work yet to be done, but we're going to celebrate tonight, and we'll roll up our sleeves and get right back at it in the morning. Thank you so much.
What were the promises that you made? What were the promises you made?
All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed the show there. That was a pretty full cover of the US federal budget, that resolution, and of course the elephant in the room, the US debt. Trump is going to deal with it all and make America great again. No one else in our previous presidency was going to be dealing with it. Trump is doing it, and you have to be radical to do it. And it's progressing pretty well so far, so pretty exciting. Hope you guys enjoyed that coverage. Catch me in the next show coming up. I hope you enjoy the new format, and we'll get rid of a few of the little technical issues and move on to greatness for sure. So don't forget to subscribe, like, share, hit the bell, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care, everybody, and bye for now.